8. Shocking home survival security practices from the Great Depression. The Great Depression forced ordinary families into conditions most modern people have never experienced. Prolonged scarcity, social unrest, rising crime, and total distrust in institutions meant to protect them. Across Europe, especially in urban and border regions, households quietly adapted their homes into survival spaces. These were not theoretical preparations. They were lived-in systems shaped by hunger, fear, and necessity. What follows are 8 security practices that kept families alive when law enforcement was overwhelmed. Neighbors were desperate, and privacy could mean survival. These methods were rarely written down, but they worked. Families deliberately disguised wealth rather than defending it openly. One of the most effective security measures during the Depression was invisibility. European families learned quickly that visible stability attracted attention. Homes that appeared orderly, repaired, or well-stocked became targets for theft, confiscation, or forced sharing. Windows were left unwashed, paint was allowed to peel, and gardens were kept deliberately modest. Inside, valuables were removed from obvious locations and replaced with decoys. A cupboard might contain stale bread while preserved food was hidden elsewhere. Today, this principle translates into avoiding obvious signals of preparedness. Stockpiles are better concealed within everyday objects, storage furniture, or false utility areas rather than marked shelves or labeled containers. Homes were reinforced internally instead of fortifying entrances. Contrary to modern assumptions, Depression-era families rarely focused on heavy locks or visible barriers. Reinforced doors advertised that something worth protecting was inside. Instead, security was built inward. Bedrooms and storage rooms were strengthened with internal braces, secondary latches, and removable barricades that could be deployed quietly at night. If a break-in occurred, families retreated to inner rooms designed to delay access. In modern homes, this concept can be applied by reinforcing interior doors, adding concealed door bars, and planning fallback rooms rather than relying solely on external defenses. Sound discipline was treated as a security system. Noise attracted danger. In crowded European neighborhoods, sound traveled fast, and desperation made people attentive to anything unusual. Families learned to live quietly. Tools were wrapped in cloth before use, floors were padded with rugs, and nighttime movement was minimized. Children were trained early to stay silent when strangers passed nearby. This form of acoustic security prevented detection long before confrontation became necessary. Today, the same principle applies by reducing noise signatures during vulnerable hours and understanding how sound travels within and outside a building. Neighbors were monitored as carefully as strangers. Community bonds existed, but blind trust vanished quickly. Families observed patterns closely: who borrowed often, who asked too many questions, who suddenly appeared during meal hours. Information was shared selectively, and supplies were never fully revealed, even to relatives. In some European cities, households maintained outward friendliness while quietly limiting access to their homes. Modern application involves maintaining cordial relationships without oversharing preparedness plans, inventory, or routines. Security failures during crises almost always begin with leaked information. Food storage locations were intentionally separated from living spaces. A common mistake was keeping all supplies in one place. Depression-era families learned to distribute resources across multiple hidden locations within the home. Root vegetables might be stored beneath floorboards, grains hidden inside wall cavities, and preserved foods placed in unused chimneys or furniture legs. If one cache was discovered or confiscated, others remained. Today, this method remains relevant. Spreading critical supplies across different rooms or concealed compartments reduces total loss during theft or inspection. Homes were modified to detect intrusion before confrontation. Early warning mattered more than defense. Simple detection methods were common: loose objects placed behind doors, gravel arranged near entry points, and hanging items that shifted when disturbed. These systems created subtle alerts without revealing their purpose. Families could prepare quietly instead of reacting in panic. Modern equivalents include low-tech alarms, strategic object placement, and motion awareness that does not rely solely on electronic systems that may fail during outages. Children were trained as part of the security system. Children were not sheltered from reality. They were taught observation, discretion, and basic security behaviors. They learned which rooms were off-limits to visitors, when to stay silent, and how to respond if questioned by outsiders. This was not cruelty. It was survival education. In today's context, age-appropriate awareness and household protocols give families resilience during emergencies rather than confusion or fear-driven mistakes. Homes were designed to appear less occupied than they were. Many families altered routines to avoid predictable patterns. Lights were used sparingly, meals were cooked at irregular times, and movement within the house was staggered. During periods of unrest, appearing absent reduced the risk of forced entry. Curtains were arranged to block interior visibility without drawing attention. Today, this concept can be applied by varying routines, limiting visible activity during crises, and avoiding predictable signs of occupancy or absence. These practices were not born from paranoia. They were shaped by years of deprivation, failed institutions, and human behavior under pressure. What makes them valuable today is their simplicity. They require no advanced technology, no special tools, and no external support. They rely on awareness, discipline, and intentional design. That is why they endured, and why they remain relevant long after the Great Depression faded into history. If this guide gave you new insight into how ordinary European families survived extraordinary times, support the channel by subscribing, sharing this episode, and keeping these lessons alive. History only stays useful if we remember how it was lived.